Rain lashed against the empty street as Emily staggered out of the car, her heart pounding like it might burst. She could barely breathe as the sharp echo of the slamming door cut through the night air. Her eyes locked on Daniel, the man she trusted, walking away. Every step he took shattered another piece of her fragile world, his hand clasped tightly with Sarah's, her childhood friend. Emily whispered to herself, "This can't be real," but the sight burned into her chest like fire. The streetlight flickered above them, throwing long shadows across the wet asphalt, framing betrayal in its rawest form. Daniel didn't look back, his silence more painful than any cruel word could have been. Sarah leaned into him, her smile twisted with a truth Emily could no longer deny. The world tilted under Emily's feet, her knees weak as a scream clawed at her throat, but refused to escape. Trust, love, family, all of it fractured in one unrelenting moment. Emily stumbled back toward the car, the sound of her shoes splashing through puddles echoing in her ears. She pressed her hand to her chest as if holding her heart inside, whispering Daniel's name like a prayer lost to the storm. The street seemed endless, her vision blurred not only by the rain but by tears she could no longer control. She had believed in promises, in vows whispered in candlelight, in the steady warmth of loyalty. Now, all of it had been torn away in seconds, leaving behind a hollow space that ached with unbearable emptiness. She thought of Sarah's laughter, of the way Daniel's hand fit into hers, and the betrayal twisted deeper like a knife. Trust was gone, and with it, everything she thought she knew about love. Her mind replayed the scene in cruel fragments, each detail sharper than the last. The way Daniel avoided her eyes, the casual intimacy of Sarah leaning into him, the silence that screamed louder than thunder. Emily gasped for breath as if the world had suddenly become too tight, suffocating her with invisible chains. Her fingers gripped the steering wheel when she reached the car, nails digging into the leather. She wanted to scream, to demand an answer, but her voice betrayed her, locked inside her throat. The night itself seemed complicit in the betrayal, rain drowning her in despair. Nothing felt real, and yet it was too vivid to deny. She leaned her forehead against the cold glass, watching droplets race down the window like broken timelines she could never piece back together. "Why, Daniel?" she whispered, the sound trembling against the silence. Memories of nights spent laughing with Sarah stabbed her as cruelly as Daniel's betrayal. Emily's reflection stared back at her, unrecognizable, a stranger carved out of sorrow. The storm outside became the storm within her chest, each lightning flash mirroring her unraveling heart. She pressed her eyes shut, hoping to erase the vision, but it clung like a wound too deep to heal. The world outside blurred into streaks of rain and neon glow, but Emily's mind refused to escape the truth. She thought of the life they built, of every sacrifice she made, now rendered meaningless by Daniel's choice. Her chest ached as if the betrayal itself had weight, pressing down until she could barely breathe. "You broke me," she whispered, not sure if it was meant for him or herself. The silence of the car swallowed her voice, amplifying the loneliness clawing through her veins. Trust was shattered, and in its place stood only emptiness, vast and unforgiving. Morning light crept through Emily's curtains, but it brought no comfort. She sat at the edge of her bed, her hands gripping the sheets like an anchor. The night replayed endlessly, tormenting her with images of Daniel and Sarah. Her chest tightened with every thought, her breath uneven as silence filled the room. She glanced at the family photo on her nightstand, smiling faces now frozen lies. "How could you do this to me?" she whispered, voice cracking like glass. Emily had built her life around trust, around sacrifice, only to watch it collapse in an instant. The weight of love betrayed pressed down heavier than the rain ever could. Emily's kitchen felt colder than usual, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. She sat with a mug of untouched coffee, staring blankly at the steam fading away. Her mind wandered to the sacrifices she made for Daniel, the missed opportunities, the years of loyalty, the quiet support she gave without hesitation. Every choice had been for them, for the life they promised to build together. Now the silence mocked her, reminding her that love had been one-sided. She whispered, I gave you everything, and her reflection in the dark window stared back, hollow and broken. She walked into the living room, her eyes scanning the walls lined with memories. Photographs of vacations, birthdays, and anniversaries seemed to mock her with their false promises. Her hand hovered over a framed picture of her and Daniel laughing by the ocean. She remembered the warmth of his arms, the whispered words that once made her believe in forever. Now the frame felt like poison in her grip. She set it back down quickly, her hand trembling, afraid she might shatter it. Her world had already shattered. She wasn't sure she could stand the sound of glass breaking again. Emily sank into the couch, her arms wrapped around a pillow, as though it might hold her together. She replayed every sacrifice, every moment she placed Daniel's dreams before her own. Her career, her passions, her independence, all exchanged for a promise of love. But that promise had been nothing but fragile paper, burned away in the fire of betrayal. The silence of the house echoed her loneliness, each room a reminder of what she had lost. She closed her eyes, and in the darkness, Daniel's face appeared again, smiling with lies. Her chest ached as she whispered, "What was I worth to you?" Her phone buzzed on the table, jolting her from her spiral. She reached for it, heart racing, hoping it was Daniel, hoping for an apology that might make sense of the chaos. But the screen lit up with Sarah's name instead, cruel and mocking. Emily froze, her hand trembling as tears blurred her vision. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her body shook as she pressed the phone face down, her breath ragged. The betrayal felt deeper than ever, knowing Sarah dared to reach out as if nothing had been broken. Emily whispered into the silence, "I don't even know who you are anymore." Emily sat at the dining table, her eyes fixed on Daniel's abandoned phone, glowing with unanswered messages. The silence in the house pressed against her chest, but curiosity clawed stronger than fear. She unlocked the screen with shaking fingers, her breath sharp as the first message revealed itself. Lines of words filled with affection and longing, but not for her, pierced her deeper than a blade. Sarah's name glared back at her, attached to secrets woven into lies. Emily whispered, "How long has it been?" Her heart pounded with betrayal's rhythm, the reality heavier than she imagined. Every message was proof that her life had been stolen behind her back. The words burned into her memory as she scrolled further. Promises of a future Daniel once whispered to her were now given to Sarah. Her pulse quickened, each message slicing away at the remains of her faith. Tears blurred the screen, but she forced herself to keep reading, desperate for truth, even though it destroyed her. Emily whispered, "All those nights you held me, were you already thinking of her?" The betrayal was not a fleeting mistake. It was a life built on deception. Her stomach twisted, her hands trembling as she realized love had been replaced long ago. Emily slammed the phone onto the table, her body shaking with rage and grief. The walls of the room seemed to close in, suffocating her with memories now tainted. Every laugh, every kiss, every vow replayed like a cruel performance staged for her humiliation. Her breath came in sharp gasps as she clutched her hair, trying to stop the spiral. She whispered Daniel's name, her voice cracking, torn between hate and longing. She wanted to confront him, to scream until the truth shattered the silence, but fear of hearing his lies out loud held her still. The room felt colder than ice, heavy with betrayal. She forced herself to move, pacing the room as anger built beneath the sorrow. Her footsteps echoed in the silence, each one heavy with fury. Memories of Sarah's laughter pierced her thoughts like venom. Emily clenched her fists, whispering, "You were supposed to be my friend." The betrayal twisted deeper, knowing the one she trusted had taken more than love. She had stolen the life Emily built. The air felt thick, pressing against her lungs as tears fell freely. The betrayal was no longer about Daniel alone. It was a wound carved by both of them. Her body weakened as the anger drained, leaving her slumped against the wall. She slid down slowly, her back pressing into the cold plaster, knees pulled to her chest. The weight of betrayal crushed her, as sobs shook her fragile frame. "I gave everything," she whispered, her voice hoarse. The messages replayed in her mind, proof of a love that had never been hers to keep. Silence filled the house, but inside her, storms raged, tearing apart the woman she once believed she was. Emily's tears blurred her vision, but the truth remained sharp. Trust was gone and she was utterly alone. Emily sat at the kitchen table, her hands gripping the edge as though it could hold her steady. Rage and fear mingled inside her chest, a storm louder than the rain outside. She rehearsed the words she would say to Daniel, every sentence sharp enough to cut. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "You don't get to break me and walk away." The phone lay nearby, glowing in the dark, her courage rising and falling with every heartbeat. She imagined his face when she demanded the truth, imagined him trapped with no lies left to hide behind. The night was thick with silence, but her resolve grew heavy with fire. Her phone buzzed, the vibration echoing through the table like a cruel reminder. She reached for it, expecting Daniel, but the name glowing on the screen froze her blood. It was her mother. They had not spoken in years, distance forged by unspoken truths. Emily hesitated, fingers trembling as the ringing continued, louder with every second. She whispered, "Why now?" Her hand shook as she finally pressed answer, voice fragile as she said hello. On the other end, her mother's voice broke with emotion, words that sliced through the dark. "Emily, there's something I never told you." The voice on the line trembled, weighted by years of silence. Emily's mother confessed truths buried too deep, truths that shifted everything she thought she knew. Her heart raced as the words spilled out, cutting deeper than Daniel's betrayal. "Your father, he isn't who you believe he is," her mother whispered. Emily gripped the phone tighter, her chest heaving, the floor beneath her seeming to disappear. Every memory of childhood, every story told, suddenly cracked like fragile glass. Her mind screamed for denial, but her mother's tears on the line carried the weight of truth. Her voice shook as she asked, "What do you mean?" But the answer only deepened the wound. Her mother revealed years of hidden deception, choices made to protect Emily from a truth too heavy to bear. Emily's breath faltered, her chest rising and falling as tears blurred her sight. The betrayal she thought ended with Daniel now stretched deeper, tangled in her very bloodline. Every part of her existence felt fragile, built on lies she had never questioned. Her hand trembled as she whispered, "Why didn't you tell me before?" The silence that followed cut sharper than words. Emily dropped the phone onto the table, the sound echoing like thunder in the quiet house. Her hands covered her face as sobs tore free, shaking her body with grief beyond control. Daniel's betrayal had destroyed her love, but this new revelation cracked the foundation of her identity. She was no longer just betrayed by the man she loved, but by her own blood. She whispered, "Who am I even now?" The house felt colder, the shadows longer, her world reduced to rubble in a single night. Everything she believed in was gone, leaving nothing but a hollow ache. Emily stood in the doorway of the cafe where Daniel and Sarah often met, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. The sight of them together twisted her stomach, but tonight was different. She would no longer remain silent, no longer carry their lies in her chest. Her voice shook with rage as she whispered, "It ends tonight." Every step closer made her pulse thunder, but strength surged through the pain. Daniel looked up, startled, his eyes wide as Emily's shadow fell across their table. For the first time, the truth was about to break free from the silence that suffocated her. Daniel rose to his feet, his voice faltering as he tried to speak, but Emily cut him off with a piercing glare. Her words lashed like fire, each one breaking through years of silence. "You betrayed me, and you thought I wouldn't find out." Sarah shifted uncomfortably, her smirk replaced by fear, her eyes darting away. Emily's chest heaved, but her voice grew stronger, commanding the room's attention. The weight of their deceit could no longer hide behind excuses or charm. For the first time, Daniel looked small in her presence, caught in the wreckage of his own lies. The cafe grew silent as Emily's voice cracked under the weight of her pain. "I gave you everything, Daniel. I built my life around you and you shattered it." Daniel tried to speak, but his words stumbled into emptiness. Sarah shifted closer to him, but her presence only fueled Emily's rage. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but her stance remained unbroken, her body trembling with strength and heartbreak. For a moment, Daniel lowered his gaze, shame etched across his face. Emily felt the power of truth surge through her veins, even as grief pulled her deeper into despair. Daniel finally lifted his head, his voice desperate, words tumbling with excuses and pleas. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," he muttered, but Emily's laughter cut him off sharp and bitter. "You chose this, Daniel. You chose to destroy us." Sarah looked away, guilt flickering across her face for the first time. The weight of betrayal pressed on them, but Emily refused to break. She stood taller, her pain reshaping into defiance, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. The moment had become more than confrontation. It was a declaration of her worth beyond their lies. The air in the cafe thickened as Emily leaned forward, her voice low but filled with fire. "You thought you could take everything from me, but you never knew my strength." Her words hung heavy in the silence, shattering the illusion they clung to. Daniel's shoulders sagged, his lies stripped bare, while Sarah shifted nervously, her confidence gone. Emily's chest rose with each breath, pain and power colliding inside her. She turned, her footsteps echoing as she walked away, leaving their broken faces behind. The confrontation had cost her everything, but it had also given her back her voice. The night after the confrontation, Emily sat alone in her living room, silence pressing against her like an unwelcome guest. The echoes of her own words still rang in her head, both freeing and devastating. She stared out the window, the city lights blurring into streaks through her tears. The cost of truth was heavy, but she knew there was no turning back. Her body ached with exhaustion, her soul burdened with scars too raw to touch. She whispered, "It's over, but why does it still hurt so much?" The emptiness around her answered, leaving her to wrestle with the aftermath of everything she had lost. The doorbell rang, breaking the silence, and Emily hesitated before opening it. On the porch stood her closest friend, Michael, his face lined with worry. His presence reminded her of loyalty untouched by betrayal, a quiet anchor in a storm. She let him inside, her voice trembling as she said, "I don't know how to move forward." Michael placed a hand on her shoulder, his words gentle but steady. "You don't have to do it all tonight. Healing takes time." The kindness in his eyes brought fresh tears, reminding her she wasn't completely alone in the wreckage. They sat together at the kitchen table, two steaming mugs between them. Michael's voice was calm, offering her space to speak, to let the weight fall where it may. Emily's hands trembled as she tried to explain, the words heavy, raw, and incomplete. "Everything I knew was a lie," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Michael didn't interrupt, his silence carrying understanding deeper than any words could. For the first time in days, she felt a fragile sense of safety, as if the broken pieces of herself were not entirely beyond repair. Later, alone again, Emily stood at the bathroom mirror, staring at her reflection as if meeting a stranger. The woman staring back was not the one who believed in forever, but someone scarred and unsteady, yet still breathing. She touched the glass, whispering, "You're stronger than this," though her voice shook with doubt. The tears came again, but they carried less despair and more release. The cracks in her heart remained, but a faint spark stirred beneath the pain, a reminder that even broken things could endure. The next morning, Emily walked outside, the sunrise breaking through a cloudy sky. The world felt both heavy and new, her breath visible in the cool air. Each step forward was difficult, but each one also carried strength she didn't realize she had. She whispered, "I will not let this define me," her words scattering into the wind. The past still clung to her, but the promise of tomorrow called faintly in the distance. For the first time since the betrayal, she felt the possibility of beginning again, fragile but real. Emily sat on her bed, phone in her hand, her thumb hovering over the call button. The screen glowed with Michael's number, the one person who had never betrayed her. She wanted to hear his voice, to feel the comfort of his steadiness. But hesitation froze her, fear whispering that even trust could shatter again. Her chest ached as she whispered, "Please answer," though she hadn't pressed the button yet. The silence of the room pressed harder than the storm outside. Finally, she pressed call, her heart racing as the phone rang. Each ring echoed like a drumbeat of her loneliness. She closed her eyes, gripping the device as if it held her together. The ringing stretched endlessly, a cruel reminder of silence. She whispered, "Don't leave me alone," her voice trembling in the stillness. When the call went unanswered, the emptiness inside her grew wider, swallowing the fragile hope she had clung to. She lowered the phone slowly, her reflection in the black screen staring back like a stranger. The quiet became unbearable, her body trembling as the tears returned. She whispered, "I'm alone," the words breaking as soon as they left her lips. The truth was sharp, more cutting than anything Daniel or Sarah had ever done. Betrayal had stolen her past, but silence threatened to consume her future. The room felt too big, too empty, echoing her brokenness. Emily walked slowly to the window, pulling the curtains aside. The city stretched out before her, glittering with lives that weren't shattered like hers. She pressed her palm against the cold glass, her breath fogging the surface. For a moment, she imagined stepping into that world, free of betrayal, free of pain. But reality clung to her skin, heavy and relentless. She whispered to her reflection, "This is who I am now," the words carrying both grief and reluctant strength. She sank to the floor beneath the window, curling into herself as the city lights blurred through her tears. The silence swallowed her again, but this time she didn't resist it. Her final whisper carried through the empty room, "I was always alone." The words lingered like an echo, a haunting truth etched into her soul. The night outside glittered indifferently, while inside, Emily's world closed with a quiet devastation that promised no easy healing. The story ended not with resolution, but with the echo of betrayal's shadow.